What if one of the hardest decisions a person can ever make isn't leaving a stranger, but leaving the people who raised them? We're taught that family is the one bond that should never break, that blood means loyalty, that walking away from the people who gave you life is the cruelest thing a person can do. But what if, for some people, staying was the cruelty? What if the people everyone calls cold or ungrateful for cutting off their families are actually the ones who fought the hardest for the longest time before finally giving up? Stay with me. Because what looks sudden from the outside almost always took decades on the inside. Here's what most people don't understand about estrangement. It's never really about one fight. One argument doesn't end a lifetime of history. A bridge rarely collapses because of a single crack. It collapses because thousands of small fractures were ignored for years, quietly spreading, weakening the structure, until one ordinary day, under perfectly normal weight, it simply gives out. Everyone watching is shocked, but the people who knew that bridge, who walked across it every day, they'd been feeling it shake for a long time. That's what it's like growing up with emotional neglect, not the dramatic kind people picture with shouting or violence, the quiet kind. A child who learns that their feelings are inconvenient, who shares something that excites them and watches a parent's face stay blank, who learns, sentence by sentence, year by year, that being smaller and quieter is the price of being tolerated. Neglect doesn't always look like absence. Sometimes it looks like a parent who is always in the room, just never actually there. Then there's the criticism that gets disguised as love. I'm only saying this because I care. I just want what's best for you. Said enough times about enough things, your weight, your choices, your career, your personality, and a child starts to internalize something devastating. Love and judgment feel identical, so they spend their whole life chasing approval that was never actually about them. It was about a parent's own fear, their own unhealed wounds, passed down like an inheritance nobody asked to receive. This is where it gets complicated because love was usually present too. That's the part people misunderstand most. Estrangement rarely happens in homes with no love at all. It happens in homes with conditional love, love that had to be earned, performed, maintained through obedience. A child raised this way doesn't grow up feeling loved, they grow up feeling evaluated. And evaluation, no matter how often it's mistaken for care, slowly teaches a person that their worth depends on someone else's approval. Add to this the invisible roles every family assigns without ever naming them. The peacekeeper, who learns to shrink their own needs to keep everyone else calm. The scapegoat, who absorbs blame that was never really theirs. The high achiever, performing love through accomplishment because vulnerability was never safe. These roles don't disappear at 18. People carry them into every relationship, every job, every silence, until something, usually years of therapy, or one unbearable moment, forces them to ask, whose life have I actually been living? And then there's guilt, the emotional rope that keeps people tied to relationships long after those relationships stopped being safe. After everything we did for you, we're your only family. Guilt doesn't ask if a relationship is healthy. It only asks if you owe something. And for years, most people pay that debt because they've been taught that questioning a parent is a betrayal, even when that parent never stopped to question how they treated their own child. This is what most people never witness, the years of quiet pain behind a decision that looks instant from the outside. The hundreds of small moments where someone almost said something and didn't. The thousands of times they excused, justified, minimized, hoped it would change. The final goodbye is rarely the beginning of the story. It's usually the very last page of a book that's been writing itself in silence for a very long time. And here's the perspective shift that changes everything. Walking away is not always running from love. Sometimes it's the first time a person has ever chosen themselves, not out of hatred, not out of revenge, but out of a quiet, exhausted realization that they cannot keep abandoning themselves just to remain available to people who never learned how to truly see them. Healing isn't about staying angry at the past forever. It's about finally understanding it, clearly enough to stop repeating it, gently enough to forgive without forcing reconciliation, honestly enough to grieve the family you needed even while accepting the one you got. Because sometimes walking away isn't an act of hatred, it's the first act of self-respect a person ever gave themselves.